Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at our transition game. Specifically, we're going to be looking at riding. In this video, we're going to look at 5 different rides. We're going to start by looking at how we want to ride in a sideline situation. Without horns, it's a little bit difficult. In a sideline ride, we're going to have to get set up really quickly. Guys are going to have to know where they need to get to. They got to get to their spots and be ready to execute. So we're going to look at a sideline ride. Then we're going to look at 4 settled rides. Fourth, and all these rides, what do they all have in common? Forth, Clyde, Tay, and Ness. They are all names of rivers in Scotland. So what we're doing here is we're setting up a river that we're hoping is going to be too deep for the other team to cross. All right, so in Forth, that is our pressure ride. That's our base ride. We're going to have 2 attackmen down, with everybody else drop back in sort of a man-to-man, but with zone principles. So we'll walk through that in a second. Clyde is going to be based out of Forth, but it's going to be a 10-man ride that we can jump into in that same setup. In Tay is going to be our drop-back 3-3 ride. It's going to be a zone ride. Okay? In that situation, we're keeping everything in front of us. We might want to slow the other team down, make them make a lot of decisions, try and make passes in tight windows. Also give our chance to get guys on the field for substitutions. So that's going to be our drop back 3-3. Out of Tay, we also have Ness that we can jump into, which is our drop back 3-3 zone pressure ride, a 10-man ride out of our 3-3. All right? So, but before we get started looking at the setup of those and how to get into them and how to execute them, I want to talk a little bit about riding in general. What does it take to be a good riding team and a good rider individually? When that ball gets turned over, your job is not done as an attackman, right? Offense doesn't stop there. It's just beginning. We want to create opportunities for offense. We want to create easy opportunities by riding. We do that by following a couple keys, all right? In this case, it's going to sound cliche, but energy and heart is something that you have to play with at all times when you're riding. Riding is not particularly difficult, but it takes effort, it takes energy, and it takes passion. Okay? If you want to find a spot on this team, one of the easiest things you can do is give your best effort at all times when you're riding. It means going hard. It means never giving up on a play. It means running out until that ball's cleared, and in the opposite end, in the opposite zone, you are playing the whole time. So in order to successfully ride, we've got to have guys who bring energy and heart at all times. I told you it was going to sound cliche, but it really is true. And I've had some of my best players be the guys that'll give me their best energy at all times. We also need guys that are going to bring the body and not the stick. Okay? If you ride using your stick, 9 times out of 10 you're going to fail, you're going to draw a penalty, or the best case scenario, they're just going to clear the ball easily. I've got to have guys that are willing to not only be athletic enough to get up and ride and get in front of guys to turn them back, but we've got to have guys that are strong enough too to match up, to ride these guys out of bounds, to create turnovers, to get on hands and not be swinging sticks. Okay, yes, we see highlights where the guy swings the stick, he helicopters the stick, the ball turns over, they get it and go. That doesn't happen that often. Do not be relying on your stick and be ready to bring the body. The third key, probably the most important, is great riding teams are made not from individuals, but when they play together as a unit. And in order to do that, you've got to be communicating with each other at all times. We're going to walk through some different things. We're going to have bump calls. We're going to have slide calls. When the ball goes on the ground, we've got to be telling each other that the ball's on the ground. We've got to go get it and swarm to it. We've got to make sure that everybody on the field is communicating with each other. When one person goes, you've got to be sure that the other people that are working within your unit know that you are moving over to that next player so that they can replace behind you. One of the things we always have to remember, the clearing team always has an advantage. They have 7 versus our 6. If we leave a player, that player is now open. If you don't have a player filling in your spot behind you, you're making it easier for the other team. And really, the best teams do that by communicating with each other. All right? So, the key is to riding. We've got to bring energy and heart, bring the body, and communicate with each other at all times. We're going to build that through training camps and through these videos. You guys are going to learn to work together as a unit. All right? So, let's get started. Let's start with our first ride. We're going to take a look at how we would want to set up on a sideline. Now, as I said in the beginning, sideline rides are a little bit more difficult because there's no horn. It's a quick turnover. So it's especially important that our attackmen react quickly to get to where they need to get to so that our midfielders have time to either substitute or drop back and get to spaces that are advantageous for us. Okay, so to start with, we're going to pretend ball's gone out of bounds on the sideline. They've got their clearing midi with the ball. The first thing we're going to do, we want to make sure that they're not just going to have a one-on-one and leg it out. Every time we need 2 attackmen up on the ball and bracketing the dodger, bracketing the person trying to clear the ball. What I mean by that is we need to have 1 attackman funneling towards the sideline and the other attackman taking away the middle of the field. We want to keep that bracket. You need to communicate. He also can't split the 2 of you. If he tries to split through the middle, we've got to collapse and we've got to close that lane for him to go. We want to force him to make a pass, either back to the goaltender or over across the field, as you'll see in a second. He should not ever be able to leg the ball out. We need 2 attackmen getting there as quick as possible. All right, so in our clearing video, we showed our sideline clear and how we'd set up. We're going to assume, for the sake of simplicity, that the other team is going to set up similar to us, meaning they have a goalie up by the restraining box, they've got a defender, another defender, a defender on the far side, they've got 1 clearing midi, and another clearing midi set up in a pattern similar to that, okay? In that case, what we want to do now is we want to match our D midis. We want to cover their clearing midis. So we're going to have a D midi, D midi, okay, and we'll circle them just so everybody can see it, okay. We need our 3rd attackman splitting. Sorry, I drew that a little bit too close. We want them splitting between that far side defenseman and the goaltender there. And we've got our 3rd D midi in between here. Okay? So as you can see, if we put 2 attackmen on the ball, okay, they've got some options to move it. But we're taking away their easiest outlets closest to where the ball is right now, relative to where the ball is right now. If you can also see, I've also drawn these guys on purpose. We want to keep a defender between the ball and the player that they're defending, okay? We don't want to be in front because we don't want to get back cut, right? And we don't want to be on the opposite side away from the ball so we can't get screened so that we can't move if we need to move when the ball moves over there, all right? Now, in this case, okay, we're making sure that this midi has to move the ball. He's not going to leg it out. So what we want to do, he's got 2 options. He's either going to go to the goaltender or he can try and throw it cross field over to the opposite side defenseman. In either case, we're going to need a bump call. We're going to need to be communicating with each other, bump, bump, bump. Okay? In this case, if he goes to the goaltender, okay, our attackman would jump, one of our other attackmen would drop back, and now our D midi is shifting over ball side. Okay, that's going to be an important concept for all of our defensive middies to understand. You're in a man-to-man principle, you're in a man-to-man situation, but with zone principles. Meaning that as the ball starts to move to one side of the field, you need to shift with that ball, but you need to communicate with each other. So as that ball is in the air, if it's going to the goaltender, we're yelling, bump, 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 right? We're all paying attention. Okay? And as that ball's in the air, we're quickly, aggressively attacking the next player. If we're slow to get there, right, that gives time for the goaltender then to survey, right? We want that ball. As soon as he throws it, we want immediate pressure on that goalie to make him make a decision at that point. Okay? Again, without drawing too many lines on here, let's keep things simple. We went to the goaltender with it. Okay? Goaltender gets the ball. Let's say now he knows he's got an outlet over on the side. That ball's going to the side. At that point, what needs to occur? These 2 defensive middies need to communicate with each other. The simplest thing to probably do is this D midi starts to cheat up, right? And as that ball's in the air, we start to attack. If he goes, though, too early, right, and doesn't have any backup, then there's an easy outlet. All of these defensive middies need to shift, okay, and work back into the field to cover the players behind them. That's another important concept. As a riding team, we can never move upfield without help behind us. We're always waiting to make sure that the players behind us are covered, right? From a transition standpoint, the clearing team wants us to attack upfield so that they can get easy transition goals going the other way. We need to make sure that we have everybody covered behind us first. So we're never moving upfield until the players behind are covered, all right? So that's one scenario. All right, let's say that they skip the ball to that defender right away. All right, so in this case, okay, again, the midi is deciding that he's going to send this defender, and he's going to try and hit that defender on the fly as that ball's coming over there. All right, in that case, as that ball's in the air, all of three of these D middies need to be communicating. And as that ball is starting to get to that defender, this D midi has to be there, this D midi has to recover, and this D midi has to get in. And everybody's shifting together. As a D midi group, if you're worried about your one player and you're thinking, I've done my job, I'm matched up, you haven't. Okay? You need to be worried about the guys on either side of you because you're going to slide. It's sort of almost like a man-down situation, right? Where we're going to be sliding adjacent at all times. You need to be ready to slide adjacent. And that's really what we're trying to do. Okay? So, in a sideline ride situation, we want to cover the easiest opportunities to get the ball out. One of the easiest opportunities is just to leg it, right? So we're not going to allow them to do that. We're going to put two attackmen up. We're going to have an attackman splitting the goaltender and the two defensemen on the back side. We've got a D midi taking away the easiest outlet right here, okay? If this defender tries to sneak in through the backside, we quickly jump him with this D midi here, okay? The other thing we need to be aware of, let's say if the D midi, or if the clearing midi, throws it to the goaltender, and now he starts to come upfield, right? Our attackman, we don't want our attackman coming over and playing defense if at all possible, right? We're not going to do that. What we need to do is communicate with this defensive midi here, and temporarily, he's got to come over to pick him up, okay? Now at that point, if the goalie sees that that's not an outlet, he's probably going to go right over to this defenseman with it. We've got time though, because all of these guys they would potentially be offside, right? If this defenseman just checks over. So what this D midi now needs to do is he needs to recognize that as soon as his guy goes back to get back on side, he needs to shift over, and then all of these guys are shifting over as well there, okay? Riding, especially in a sideline ride situation, it takes a tremendous amount of communication and teamwork in order to be effective at it. As you can see, if these guys just stay with their men, right, if they just stay with the three players there, it's not too hard to make a couple tic-tac-toe passes to get it out and clear the ball, okay? But the teams that are really good at riding, they're really effective, like we talked about, at communicating, anticipating, shifting quickly, and being aggressive on ball. Okay, think about that as a lacrosse player, right? What are the most difficult times for you? It's probably when you've got someone that's really athletic and up on you and they're checking you hard and making you make decisions really quickly and not letting you survey the field, okay? That probably should have been another key that I should have put up there, right? We have to be aggressive when we ride. If you sit back and allow the other team time, they're gonna get open and they're gonna find that lane, okay? So, that's our sideline ride, and I'm sure we'll have opportunities to talk about that more as a group when we get into our training session. In our next segment, we're going to take a look at our first settled ride. We're going to look at fourth. Okay, in fourth, this is going to be our base ride. We're going to have two attackmen down. All three attackmen are going to be in what we call a string concept, and they're going to be working together in pistons. Okay, they're going to, when one goes, the other one reacts and replaces where they went. Our D middies up top are going to be in the way they're aligned right now, it looks like they're playing man-to-man, but as we talked about before, they're in zone principles, okay? And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So, we're going to assume that the other team is setting up in a traditional 34 clear. They've got 3 down, they've got a defenseman, a goalie, a defenseman. They've got a midfielder, and a defenseman across the top of the midfield stripe there, okay? The way we're going to set up, we've got one attackman on the ball. Notice the position that he's in, right? He's using the sideline to his advantage. He's taking away the middle of the field. He's closing the distance and using this sideline to ride it out if that defenseman tries to test him and just leg the ball out. We want to make that defenseman move the ball, okay? We've got another attackman splitting between the top of the box and the goaltender down below there, okay? Again, these two guys are on a line. And finally, our third attackman is on the far side of the field, taking away the defenseman at the top of the midfield stripe there. This is a long pass to make up there, but the teams we play against, they're going to be capable of making that. So we want this attackman here to make sure that we're taking that away, okay? We'll have 2 different situations where we might actually have the attackman lock this defenseman if he goes over and he goes with him. We just have to make sure that our other players are on sides. But most of the time, if this defenseman steps over and they want to try that home run ball, again, we'd have that bump call and everybody would shift over. Okay, but in this case, that's how we're going to set up. Okay, we're going to designate 2 attackmen down and the third attackman taking away the deep hole at the top of the midfield line. They're in that string concept to start. All right, some other concepts. To start, if the ball is in this corner, wherever that first pass is made, that attackman has to communicate with the other attackman up here. If the ball goes to the goalie, our preference is that this attackman takes an angle in which he can follow that ball. This is the one situation where we're going to slide after a pass is made. Normally in a man-down situation, you wouldn't follow the ball, right? The next person would move into that place and rotate, right? And everybody rotate together. In this case, when we're riding in fourth, our first attackman, if he can, he's going to get to that ball, okay? If the pass is made all the way across the field, we would now shift. This attackman would come down. This attackman would replace, okay? And again, we're still in that string concept because we've got our attackman, and now we've got a midi up in the other corner there. So these guys are working together. Let's say for some reason that pass goes really quickly and this attackman communicates he's going to go. He pistons down. This attackman's got to get upfield and he's got to get to the middle because he's got to guard against these 2 defenders coming up. So the guy that's playing center field here has the responsibility of being able to get to a spot, right? To take away an angle. As he slides, we would never want to go flat, right? Again, we want to use that sideline. So we're staying upfield, taking a good angle so that we can ride the defenseman out or the ball carrier out of bounds using that sideline there, okay? The other things that we want to talk about. As we talked about, these D middies are in a they're in man-to-man coverage, but with zone principles. So when the ball starts to shift, let's say it goes to the goalie, we're moving towards the middle, moving towards the middle, moving towards the middle. Okay? If the ball shifts way over to this side, right, we're going to shift a little bit further over, a little bit further over, a little bit further over, right? Because the concept, if the ball comes to this side, if this defenseman starts to stretch, this midi, this clearing midi has to stay on sides at that point, right? Or one of these middies has to, right? So at that point, we're shifting our man-to-man coverage, zone principle, over to the opposite side of the field, okay? This attackman can help. He can play a zone coverage in the middle here, okay? So if we're not locking this defenseman with this attackman, our D middies have to shift in each case, okay? So again, in fourth, in our base ride, our 2 attackmen down are working together in a piston concept. Okay, they're taking good angles to use the sideline at all times. We're trying to make as many passes as we can, as long as we can, and our attackmen have to work hard. It goes back to those principles. Energy, heart, taking a good angle, using the body, communicating. That bump call is really, really important. right? When the ball's in the air, we're all yelling, bump, 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 shift, shift, right? And moving from one side of the field to the other, okay? And finally, our D middies up top, right? We have to make sure that we're, again, not just focusing on the initial guy that we're covering. When that ball's in the air, we're all paying attention. When you hear those bump calls, or maybe you're making the bump call, we're echoing it, right? We're all shifting together. Ball goes back to the other side of the field. Now we're all shifting. The other important thing, we didn't just draw these D middies here randomly. They're keeping guys in front of them, okay? We never want anybody behind us, okay? So another key principle, make sure when we're riding, we're keeping the clearing team in front of us. We can see them at all times. All right, now, what happens? Let's say one of these guys flashes to the ball, okay? You're going to go with them, right? We're still there. We're bumping ball side heavy. So this D midi, right? If the ball's over there, these D middies would be lined up. This attackman would be shifted over, okay? So in this case, right, if the ball is down low, we're in that man-to-man, we're going with the player that's cutting, okay? Once the ball starts to shift from one side to the other, we've got to look, we've got to communicate, and we're bumping to the opposite side of the field, okay? So if a player cuts to it, we're cutting with them, all right? Again, I want to highlight this attackman over here. This attackman needs to really communicate with these D middies. If the player that this attackman is covering is stepping over, he needs to be communicating with the other D middies to shift and bump over from their initial coverages. Otherwise, this is a very easy clear, right? 1, 2 passes and it's out. We don't want to make it that simple, okay? The other important thing is this attackman cannot shift downfield unless he knows that he has coverage there, okay? If he goes, again, very simple. Pass upfield, right? We're out. If this guy bumps over, now we're in trouble because we've created transition for them. This attackman cannot move upfield until he knows that he has coverage behind him, okay? And that we've stopped any type of transition and hopefully made it more difficult for them to get the ball out because we're working hard, we're aggressive, we're checking, we're on sticks. Okay? All right, so that's fourth. In our next segment, we're going to transition from fourth, and now we're going to talk about Clyde. Same setup, but now we're going to run a 10-man. Okay? In this case, we're bringing an extra defender upfield. Okay? Our goalie is out of the net, and our other 2 defensemen are taking attackmen. Okay, so I'm going to draw over on the side here. We don't have room to show that, but in the other end of the field, right, we've got our goal. Okay, we've got the box. We now have, if they've got their attackman out, our goalie's out, our defenseman's out, defenseman out, and our third defenseman is now going to be upfield helping out here. I actually should draw that in red so it doesn't get confusing here. So our 10-man is going to be upfield, and in this case, he's going to be to the side of the field where their third pole, where their upfield pole is. Okay? So again, if we're in Clyde, if we're yelling Clyde, that's our 10-man, where now our goalie's out, our defenseman's out, our other defenseman out. Our third defenseman is upfield to the clearing side their third pole, their upfield pole side of the field. Okay? Concepts to understand. In this situation, again, yes, the net is open. This is a dangerous situation. This takes everybody working together, being aggressive. If you are slow, if you're methodical, if you're working through it, this doesn't work. If you give time for the other team to scan the field and look, they'll be able to score on the open net every time. This takes anticipation, aggressiveness, and making sure that we're putting pressure on the ball at all times. So when we're in this, you have to commit to doing this. We're going to be doing this probably in situations where we need the ball back. Maybe we're playing a team where they have an advantage. They might have players that we don't match up real well against, and we're trying to create some offense through our riding game. Okay? So again, these guys are out. They're locked man to man. Our goalie, if your attackman starts to run all over the field, guess what? so are you. You're running all over the field at this point. We know that takes you away from the goal. We understand that, okay? We will have a crash call. If they get the ball over the midfield line and they look like they've got a clear entryway to get it into the box, we'll be yelling, crash, crash, crash. And at that point, everybody is replacing, our goalie gets back in the net, we pick up our players, okay? But again, if we do this correctly, we shouldn't have to do crash calls too much, all right? So we'll clear this part, okay? The other thing now, different from when we're in fourth, we said before that these D middies are kind of in a zone principle. They are no longer in a zone principle. They are locked on. So we're going to draw these even tighter now. All right, so D midi right up on there. D midi. D midi. All right? The idea is that there is no outlet with their short sticks. We're taking away all of their short sticks. And when I write D midi, one of these guys might be an LSM as well. Okay? So D midis are locked on at that point. Okay? Again, we have our third defensive pole upfield to the side in which their third clearing pole is. We've got our attackman up. So again, it should look like exactly, if we're doing this correctly, it should look like just like we're in our base ride, it should look like just like we're in fourth. Okay, so Clyde has the same setup, except that we're pulling the goalie out, we're sending a pole upfield at that point. Okay? In this case, we also want to move our second attackman then on that string upfield a little bit more to encourage this pass to be made. They might go to the goalie at first, but we're going to jump that quickly. In this case, again, man-to-man, so that he's not going to chase in this case. We want them to get the ball to this side of the field, okay? This attackman should be kind of anticipating a little bit. As that ball is in the air, boom, we're going, and we're going at an angle so that he can't cut into the middle of the field. We're going hard at an angle, we're getting there, we're getting on hands, putting pressure on him at all times. We're not swinging our stick, but we might be chopping at hands, we're pressuring with the body. We're hoping that he's like, oh wow, this attackman came down to get me. This would be the open guy, okay? That is true, okay? And if he cuts down to it, we make sure that we get our defensive middies on side, right? 1, 2, we have one on side here. If this midi is on side, he'd have to go with him. We need all of our guys. We need this far side midi to step over, right? We gotta have at least one D midi on side. So we gotta step over, and now he goes, and now we've got a D pole on D pole matchup, right? That's advantageous for us. We want the other team, we want their D pole with the ball, with our best D pole coming up, okay, and being able to get a takeaway, scoop the ball up, and create transition on the other side of the field, okay? We'll walk through that again. Okay, and then I want to talk about some other keys to communication here. This works only if we communicate and only if we're aggressive and put pressure on the ball. Remember we talked about, we don't want the other team to be able to stand with it, scan the field, find an open guy, or the other thing that breaks it down is if we just let somebody leg it out, right? And then we're in trouble. All right, so again, we're starting, we said our D middies are locked man-to-man. Our attackmen are a little bit more, this one, same place, taking away the sideline, making that first pass. We've got our other attackman down, cheating a little bit, right? Encouraging this far side pass. These two attackmen, if they go back and forth a little bit, just stay there. We need the ball to get to this side of the field. Once the ball's in the air, going to this side of the field, this is when the communication starts, right? The D middies have to look. Ideally, the far side defensive midfielder comes onside, leaving the furthest pass away open. We're encouraging, this attackman is now going hard with the ball in the air. We're encouraging them to make this pass, which we can jump. If that defenseman has enough whereabouts to know that now this midi is open, right? Well, if he starts to make that pass, this D midi goes, this defenseman's got to get back on side, And the other thing is, in a 10-man ride, we're swarming, okay? These attackmen, if these guys are behind them, they have free reign to swarm to the middle of the field. We want you to double team, okay? If you find that your defenseman, goalie, and defenseman are behind you that you're covering, that's fine. Move upfield, trap in the middle of the field. Be aggressive. Look for double team opportunities, okay? So as that ball's in the air, right, we're anticipating we're getting there quickly. Ideally, we want him to panic and throw the ball up to the defenseman up here. This defenseman, we're onside, this defenseman goes. Again, if he finds another opening, that's okay, right? We get back on sides, we jump quickly. These attackmen are now entering, right? They're getting involved in the play. Once the ball is away from those three guys behind them, these two attackmen are now part of the ride. They're jumping, they're swarming, they're getting the ball on the ground. So again, all goes back to our keys in the beginning. You gotta be aggressive, you gotta have heart, you gotta hustle, okay? All the cliche things that you hear coach speak, right? All right? But I think this is a lot of fun. I love playing this style of a riding game. When I've had my best athletes, we've been really, really good at creating turnover, causing teams to panic, and it's just a fun brand of lacrosse to play, okay? All right. So that is Clyde. That's our 10-man out of our base 2 attackmen down. Okay? Next up, we're going to look at Tay, which is our drop 3-3 ride. In our next segment, in our next video here, we're going to take a look at our drop 3-3 zone Tay and our drop 3-3 zone 10-man Ness. Okay? In these situations here, we've dropped back our attackmen and we've dropped back our D-middies. As a general guideline, we want our attackmen 5 yards above the midfield and we want our D-middies 5 yards behind the midfield line. Now again, we say that's a general rule of thumb as to where we want to set up. In every case, if they stretch the field, we never want players behind us, so we have to adjust to that. But in general, when we quickly get into Tay, we want our attackmen to drop back to approximately about 5 yards above the midfield and our D-middies 5 yards behind, ensuring that all the players that are clearing are still in front of us. If they're not, then you need to drop back further. The idea behind this is to condense the field. Take away areas we're not worried about here anymore to make them clear in a smaller window of space, to make those passes a little bit tighter, to make those decisions a little bit quicker and under duress. So it's a drop 3-3 zone, but it's an active zone. Okay? A lot of people think at the lower levels, they think, well, it's a zone, I can just stand in a spot. No, this is an active zone that we're putting pressure on the ball at all times with. The zone moves depending on where the ball is. Okay? So again, that's our rule of thumb to start, where we want to set up. Okay, but at that point, if the ball, let's say again, ball's in this corner, our zone shifts over. Everybody bumps to take away the easy passes and make sure players are covered in the area where the ball is. Okay? As the ball starts to shift, we're going to need that bump or shift call. Bump, 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 shift, shift, shift. Right? As that ball goes to the goaltender or goes over to this side of the field, right? Then everybody again would switch. We'd start shifting over. Bump, bump, bump. Okay, and we're picking up the players in the area. So in this case, the ball shifts all the way over here. The furthest guy away is now covered, or is now open. Okay, and the rest of these players are all covered, right? We've got them, we're bracketing up on top up here. We're making sure that if a midi is in your area, you're covering that midi, even if you're an attackman, right? D-midi, we're covering, we're covering, we're covering, we're covering. We're taking away those easy passes. We're not worried about these guys down here right now, okay? If a player cuts into your zone, right, catches that pass, at that point, these two attackmen are free to go swarm because you know you've got help behind you. All of these D-middies are shifting over. This attackman's shifting over. Okay, so anytime a player cuts into your area, catches a pass, boom, to attackman, swarming the ball, putting pressure on it right away, and forcing him into tough decisions that he's got to make very quickly. Okay? So if a guy bumps into your zone, you're attacking him. Okay? Now, most teams are going to walk the ball up the field if they see this, right? Again, see, depending on where the ball is. Okay, let's say the ball's shifted over here. We're walking upfield. We're walking upfield. Walking upfield. Again, you can already see how the field is shrinking, right? They've got less area to throw the ball. Okay, as that happens, we know we should be shifted over, shifted over, shifted over. We're shifting. Okay, ball's on this side. As they get above the restraining box, this attackman jumps. This defenseman's covered. This middy's covered. Middy's covered. Middy's covered. We're leaving sort of in this zone, this furthest middy. This attackman would now be splitting two guys on the back side there, right? But everybody else is covered at that point. So what we're doing is we're allowing them to walk up the field till they've really condensed those windows to throw in. We're making sure we're shifting over, we're covering the guys. We're not just in a zone. Remember, you're not just covering air. We're not going to let a guy catch the ball there. Okay? So in this case, as this attackman goes, this D-middy's picking up this defenseman, D-middy, attackman, attackman split in two, right? Okay? Ball goes over to the goaltender. Boom, we drop back. This attackman goes. Okay? This attackman's picking up this middy. This middy's being picked up. We're shifting over to the middle of the field. Shifting to the middle of the field. We're picking everybody up. Right? So anytime the ball is above the goal, above the restraining box, the attackman are moving upfield, and we're jumping the pass at that point. Okay? Again, we'll walk through this. We'll kind of take away the arrows here. Okay, so important principles to understand. It's a zone, but it's an active zone, and we're putting pressure on the ball at all times when that ball is in your zone. Okay, putting pressure on it is really important. All right, so since it says that the ball's on the other side over there, let's just stay on that side. Okay, so in this case, we've already shifted correctly, right? The ball's on this side, this attackman's over here, middy's over here, attackman, D-middy, attackman. This D-middy might even be pushed over a little bit further. They're walking upfield. Walking upfield. Walking upfield. As soon as they get above the restraining box, this attackman is going. We've got this guy covered. We've shifted over. We've covered. We've covered. Right? These guys are splitting on the backside here. Ball shifts over to the goalie. Quickly, in the air. We're going. We're on the hands. This guy is shifting back into the zone up here, allowing this D-middy to move over. Sorry. Shifting into the zone up here, allowing this guy to bump over, this guy to bump over. Okay, still splitting the two on the backside here. This attackman's helping out. You've got to be looking. If there's a player in your area, you're picking them up to take away those easy outlets from the goalie there. Okay? This all takes practice, and hopefully we can get on the field to work on the timing of this as well. If everybody works together and we're communicating, this can cause a lot of havoc because, again, you're condensing the field, you're causing players to have to make quick decisions in small areas, okay, under duress. All right, so that is Tay. In the next segment, we're going to look at how do we shift into a 10-man from our drop 3-3. We're going to disguise it. We're going to make it look like we're sitting in our 3-3 zone, but we're really all of a sudden going to go into a 10-man really quickly and make it even more difficult for them to make decisions quickly. Okay? So we'll take a look at that now. All right, in our final segment here, we're going to take a look at our last ride, Ness, which builds off of Tay. Ness is we're going to set up in our drop 3-3 ride, okay, similar to Tay, but we're going to run a 10-man out of it. Okay, like we saw before, when we run a 10-man, what that means is now our goaltender is out taking an attackman. Both of our other defensemen are out taking attackman, locking them off making sure that they don't be able to get the ball. We talked about before, if this attackman runs all over the field, our goalie's going with him. Our defensemen are going with him. We can't give him those outlets, okay? The other thing we talked about is we're bringing that third defenseman upfield, okay, to become a rover, okay, or someone who is able to go get that ball when it's in the air, and we're bringing him up to that third pole side, that third clearing pole side of the field, okay? So again, initially, when the ball goes out of bounds, we're dropping all three attackmen back, our D middies back, 5 and 5, right? 5 yards above, 5 yards below, okay? Again, general rule, we're letting nothing behind us, but we're quickly gonna shift. Our D middies are paying attention that once this defenseman is upfield and in position, we are now going to lock the middies, similar to when we're in Clyde. Okay, so in the 10-man, we've dropped back, but now we're taking the D middies away. We're taking the clearing middies away, and our D middies are locked. Okay? The nice part about this 10-man ride is it gives us time to get into it. It gives us time to get an LSM on the field, because when that ball goes out of bounds, our attackmen are instantly dropping back to give us a little bit of coverage, right, in case there's a quick inbounds. We're taking away those guys. We get our players on the field, and we can get locked, and we can get man-on-man coverage right away on these D middies. We get this defenseman upfield, okay? Ideally, on the whistle, when that ball comes in bounds, again, if the ball's down here, this attackman's going at an angle. This attackman's going. This attackman's going. Okay? And the idea behind this, right, is that, oh wow, the guy with the ball, maybe he's saying, okay, I'm going to loop one all the way over the top, or I'm going to get it to my goalie quick, right? But both of those guys are panicked because they're seeing all three of these attackmen come at them quickly, aggressively, at good angles so that they can't get beat. That's the other thing, right? As we're coming at these guys, you cannot get beat one-on-one. You're going hard, aggressive, but under control so that they can't leg it out. This whole thing breaks down if you allow the other team to leg it out. We talked about that before. Aggressive, hard, on hands, causing turnovers, but at an angle in which you can get there and stop the ball. Okay? So we're coming down. We're forcing them. We're causing them to panic. They're looking up. All of the D middies, all of their outlets, all of their clearing middies are covered. They've got nowhere to go with the ball. They know they've got one extra defenseman. We want one of them to, again, he cuts into an area, we want them to panic, and we want the ball to come up here, okay, and this defenseman to go. Again, advantageous, pole on pole, right? We've got a pole catching the ball, we've got another pole coming to try and get that ball on the ground, create some sort of turnover, okay? In that case, right, if this clearing middy has stayed onside here, well, our D middy does have to get onside, right? We do have to have onside coverage. So these D middies have to look, right? And, you know, if this clearing middy is already onside here, this D middy is like, great, I'm on, you can go. So that's the other important thing, right? Our D middies have to be communicating with our pole, with our 10-man ride pole up here. You can go, you're good, go. I've got it, I'm onside, right? And it sounds, I know I sound crazy here on this video right now, but you have to communicate like that on the field. You've got to communicate as a unit. You've got to be yelling, bump, shift, you can go, I'm on, I got your onsides, I'm good, back onside, I'm here, right? Communicate with each other to let each other know where you are on the field, where the ball is, so that we can be aggressive and get there quickly, okay? So again, what this does is it's forcing the other team to make decisions under duress, okay? Talked about before, these three guys down low are just as important, okay? When you watch our clearing videos, we're going to talk about how we would clear against a 10-man ride, and we've got some things that we would do that I'd put this goalie in an uncomfortable situation. Well, our goalies have to be athletic, they've got to be active, and they can't have any fear. If your attackman's running all over the place, you've got to run with them, okay? If we do get in a situation where they've cleared the ball and it looks like they're getting into our zone, we're yelling crash. At that point, immediately, we get back in, the ride's over, we settle in, we play good 6-on-6 defense, okay? So again, I hope you guys enjoy these rides. I'm looking forward to doing the chalk talks with you guys and talking through some of the questions you might have. But again, I think this style of play is a lot of fun. It's aggressive. We've got guys flying all over the field. And it is smart. We're doing things, we're keeping the play in front of us, We're making sure that we're not getting beat in transition, but we're trying to cause turnovers. One of the hardest things to do is score 6-on-6 in lacrosse. If we can get a couple extra possessions, if we can get some easy goals off of turnovers, right, we're making our lives a lot easier. And again, we're going to go back, and I'm going to say the coach speak and the cliches again. I need guys that can bring energy. I need guys with heart. I need guys that are aggressive, that'll bring the body. I don't need guys that are throwing one-handed stick checks. Okay, 9 out of 10 times we talked about it. It's not going to land. I need guys bringing the body. Communication. Communication is so important. We've got to have guys out there that trust each other as a unit, that are working together. If one guy isn't doing their job, everything breaks down. Okay, so again, hopefully we get a chance to get on the field and go through this to get our timing down and work through some of those kinks. But if we don't, and we have to get on the field and play, well, we work through it together on the sidelines, and we'll do it. All right? So that is transition riding. Again, any questions, you guys can email me anytime. We've got those chalk talks. But we went through Sideline Ride. We went through Fourth. Clyde, our 10-man out of our base. We went through Tay, our 3-3 drop ride. And we went through Ness, our 3-3 10-man ride. Okay? Hope you guys enjoyed it.